Okay, so last week we started this whole thing off with talking about getting pre-approved. So wanted to circle back on that again, spend maybe 5 minutes on this. So when someone's getting a pre-approval, what info are you actually collecting? I know you talked about it. You try to keep it to like 10 minutes. Sometimes it's longer. Again, it's, like I said, it all depends. But what information is being collected from someone on a typical pre-approval?
On a normal pre-approval, for the majority of people, I tell them answer the questions as best you can off the top of your head. So things that start, everybody knows their name. I mean, this is going to sound dumb, but everybody knows their name. They know their birth date. They know their address. They know their social security number. They know where they work, and they know roughly what they make. Okay, so that's for most people. Some people have a little bit of fluidity about what they make, but what their earnings are, and they know where they bank, right? But they might be on commission and they know where they bank. So they know most of that big stuff off the top of their head. What they don't know and what they get nervous about, and a lot of times it's more nerves than anything else. I want to make sure I give you the right account number. I want to, I have $1,426.17 in my bank account, my checking account. Best you can off the top of your head. Those numbers move up and down anyway. Really what we're trying to do is just figure out, get a picture of about where you are. And so again, most people can do that in 10 minutes. Now it becomes a little more complicated if they're self-employed, but not necessarily a lot. If they have a bunch of properties, and that happens, but usually what I tell them is fill out the information on the pre-approval for just the one, and then we'll do the rest in a conversation. It'll be easier for me to sort of match it up that way.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, but the original idea is most of the stuff.
Yeah.
You know most of it.
Now, do you want someone, does that mean, again, like you were just talking about what they have to look for, the pre-approval process, is someone looking for pay stubs and tax returns?
So as I say, I'm going to ask them, and depending on the timing, but usually I'm going to ask them at the time of pre-approval, if they work for and get a W-2, probably going to ask them for the most recent pay stub and the most recent W-2. At this time of year, the most recent W-2. Sometimes we need two. Sometimes we don't. If they get paid on a commission or they have a variable portion to their pay, I might ask them for their last paycheck stub from last year, just so we can break down how those different incomes come. But normally, I shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to. Normally, I don't ask for bank statements up front. I for sure don't ask for two, unless there's something specific that I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because most people don't lie. They make mistakes sometimes, but most people don't lie. So I did a pre-approval at 10 o'clock last night, and he's self-employed. So and they wanted to make an offer this morning. So I send me your taxes. Do you have access to your taxes? Yeah, I uploaded their taxes. I went through them last night. Done. Pre-approval done at 8:30 this morning.
Okay.
So yeah, but yes, to go back. Most of the stuff the documents that people provide, I know I'm rambling, the documents that people provide, now they're not going to folders, it's all available to them online. Their pay stubs are online, their bank statements are online, their W-2 is probably in their payroll portal, so it's usually 4 minutes.
Sure.
Documents are easy.
Yeah,
documents
so
are easy.
it's not, I don't want to say it's not a lot of work, but it's maybe not as much as people think, which again, I always look back as why some people are so anxious or hesitant to move forward with the process, because they think, oh my gosh, to get this started I got to do weeks worth of work, and it's not the case. So
yeah, I mean, with a lot of them, you can, can't get access to it. Take a picture of it on your phone and upload it.
Okay. Yeah. So it's
super simple.
Getting the ball rolling is really what it is, if nothing else.
Yes.
And then so part 2 of that. Why is it so important for people to get a pre-approval as part of their process, rather than just saying, because I sometimes hear it from people that say, you know what, let's start looking, and this is where I have to step in and be the realtor, right, and say, look, really that's not how this works. You need your pre-approval to even get this process started. One, I'm never going to get an offer accepted if I send some, and a lot of times they say, well, let's start looking, and then we'll figure it out from there, which is like going the cart before the horse type of thing. So why is it so important for somebody to get their pre-approval before they even go out looking?
Well, I think It's important because if you don't have a pre-approval, some agents aren't even going to give you access to their properties,
Correct.
right? So some listings you're not even going to get to see. But beyond that, I think the pre-approval process is really good for several things, and in no particular order. But people are busy, right? We live busy lives. People are working, they've got responsibilities, they've got kids, they've got pets, they've got all these things, and so we want to make sure that they're looking at the right properties. And when we do a pre-approval, it helps us to figure out which properties we should be looking at. So they might have an area, and they, I hear this a lot. I want to spend $400,000. I want to spend $500,000. Okay, well, but I only want to spend $2,400 a month. Okay, well, how much of a down payment do you have, right? So we want to make sure that we are merging what their comfort level is with what their financials are. But other stuff, sometimes there's errors on credit reports. We want to know.
Yes,
about that.
I've been
We
through
want
that.
to know about that stuff as early as possible in the process, because sometimes that can take a while to correct. Super common to have an outstanding collection account that show up on your credit report that has been paid but hasn't been taken off, so that can adversely affect your credit score. There may be a late payment that shows up that can be removed. There can be a bunch of things. It may be that the best way to use somebody's money. I've got a client that I'm working with right now. I've been working with them for the better part of a year, looking for the right property. They've got a pretty large amount of money saved. They came to me like, we want to make this as a 20% down payment, and I said, let's make a 10% down payment and use the other 10% to pay off these other debts.
Okay.
So that you can look at a little bit nicer home, because the stuff that they were looking at didn't really suit their needs. They were going to be in really rough condition. They were lower price points, and by using their money in a different way, instead of looking at $250,000 properties, now we can look at $350,000 properties for the same amount of money going out every month.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just, which gets them. It's a completely different class of property, a completely different type of property. They're very specific about the area that they want to be in, but it's literally the difference between looking at a property that has studs and no walls versus a house that has a bunch of stuff done.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's to me probably the biggest reason why it's so important. Everybody can make a guess of like what they think they can afford or what they want to look at, but if you don't have any idea going in, it makes no sense. And again, I wouldn't even let one of my buyers do this, but because I'm not going to run you around and show you $750,000 properties when you can only afford $600, or maybe you don't even want to afford. Again, it just makes no sense in doing it. It's
right.
It's kind of, you're wasting your own time, and other people's time, and again, it's not the right way to do it. That's why we're in place, to make sure that they have the right information from the get-go. So, all right, so let's go into. We have clients that have been pre-approved by Guaranteed Rate Affinity. Their ducks are in a row.
Yep.
We are ready to go out looking.
Okay.
We get super lucky. They find the house of their dreams. It's the first house we go and see.
That's because we've done a great
Yes.
job preparing them.
Exactly. They submit an offer on this property.
Yep.
I get the phone call from the agent. She says, she says, we love your offer. We're accepting it. It's wonderful. Everything's great. I say, awesome. I call our clients and say, guess what? Your offer's been accepted. I'm going to go ahead and let Jim know. I'm going to email the contract over to Jim so he can take a look at it. Contract. I call you up and say, Jim, I just emailed you this contract. Their offer is accepted.
This is
You
the
say,
greatest
"This
day
is
of my
awesome,"
life.
right? And now what happens? What do? Like, okay, their offer is accepted. Now they have to get a mortgage, right?
Yep.
So now it becomes real, I guess. So now, what are those sort of, in nutshell, behind the scene things going on, and things that the buyer can expect that, what happens next?
Yep. Okay. Great question. And normally when we get to that point, I've already prepared them. So they have a pretty good idea what's coming up. So we've collected, with the pre-approval, we've collected probably that most recent W-2, a pay stub, bank statements, maybe retirement statements, maybe not. We're going to update some of those documents. We're going to see what's dated, what's expired, what may expire by the time we close. We're going to update that information. Again, it's a pretty simple process because pretty much everything is digital now, so people can get at that stuff normally in a couple of minutes. But we're going to have a conversation. We're going to go back through that offer. I describe that process. Once stuff goes under contract, I tell my clients to expect. This may not be what people want to hear. It's kind of like a hurricane. In a good way, if there is such a thing.
It's a good hurricane.
So when we think about that hurricane, right, we have this swirl that's going around. So at the beginning of this process, the front end of that hurricane, there's all this activity. We go out and we look at a house, we get under contract, we make our mortgage application, we have a home inspection done, we do all of these things. We start working on our homeowners insurance, we gather documents. None of them are difficult or super time consuming of their own, but it's a lot of things that aren't in people's schedule. And then we get that first wave of stuff done. We hand that off to the professionals, and then you're in the eye of the hurricane. And then all this activity is going on around you. Your agent is working, your attorney is working, your home inspector is working, your lender is working, your homeowner's insurance agent is working. But all that, you're in the middle of that,
Right.
but you're not really doing anything.
That's a good way to put it.
You're not really doing anything. So
Doesn't mean that there's not a zillion things going on.
Correct. There are a million things going on. There's a ton of parties that are doing work, but buyers. I talk about that as the lull, right? That you sit in that eye of the storm,
Yeah.
and everybody's working around you, and if you want to, you can see it, but you don't have a lot of responsibilities in that time. And then as we get closer to closing, then we hit that backside, which is usually not quite as busy, but that's where we're doing final updates on documents. We're finalizing homeowners insurance. You might be setting movers. You're doing utility setup, things like that. And again, not things that are terribly difficult or super time consuming, they're just checklist items that we want to take care of. But yeah, so there's this front end and there's this back end, and then in the middle is this time when literally, if you think about it, right, there's a lender, there are two realtors, there are two attorneys, there's an appraiser, there's a title company. So at the very least, that's 7.
Right.
At the very least, that's 7, and maybe more than one inspection. There's a bunch of people doing work on buyer's behalf that the buyer doesn't have to do.
Yeah, that's a good way. The hurricane is a good way to put it, because I usually tell people that once we're under contract, there's not going to be a whole lot going on. It doesn't mean that there's anything. It's that we're in a good spot. It's
Right.
not. Don't panic. But other than maybe some, inspection negotiation issues and things like that, if everything went relatively smoothly, there's a few things we're going to be working on, but you're not going to be getting phone calls every day from parties like, hey, this,
Right.
I need that. And, it's kind of like that. You say you're in a little bit of a calmness.
The other thing about the pre-approval process is the more documentation we can collect up front, the more separation we can get, the less stressful it is once you sign the contract.
Right.
So the more things that we can have that we can separate from that front edge, because there are a lot of things that happen. And one of the things that happens for a lot of people, a lot of buyers, first-time buyers, but not just first-time buyers, is they sign that contract and they get nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're prepared, even though they've done all the stuff, even though we know how much the payment's going to be, we know all of these things, but it's different once you put your name on a contract. It just is. And not for everybody, but for a lot of people. And when I bought my current house 22 years ago, I got amnesia on my, how does my own deal work? And I've done it thousands of times. It's just, it's a new thing. And so again, we try and separate. The pre-approval allows us to separate some of those things and to prepare. So the other thing about the pre-approval, right, is preparation. Just circling back a little bit. Nobody, when it came time to make that offer and have that offer accepted on that house that they love, nobody was ever regretful that they were too prepared. Nobody ever said, "Man, I wish I was less prepared. Boy, I wish I hadn't worked
wish
on
I would
my
have
credit.
winged that a little bit more.
I wish I hadn't. I'm so
exactly.
glad I didn't do anything with my credit." It's the more preparation. I think anywhere from 90 days to 12 months, people should, if they're thinking about it. If you've got a lease expiring this year in 2026,
But if your lease is up in May and you're like, I want to buy a house,
you should be working on
you
stuff
shouldn't be
now.
waiting until like April,
You should be working on
right?
stuff
To
now.
figure it out. Yeah.
Even into the summer. I've got people into the summer. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
All right, cool. That's a good way to kind of, I guess, take us out of this one, because we're 1 day left. This is it. This is the
Right.
last day, and I don't know
Right.
if it'll get posted before 2026 gets here. But anybody going into 2026 that's even thinking about maybe buying, pre-approval's first step. Call Jim. But next week, going into the new year, we can talk about some loan options.
Yep.
And again, still kind of part of that pre-approval process, I guess I might want to say. But loan options, how different down payments affect their interest rate, whatnot. We kind of talked about that before we even got started with this. All whatever FHA, conventional, the pros and cons of them, and like we said, it always depends on a bunch of different variables for people. But whatever, how this much affects your PMI, with your mortgage insurance,
Yep.
how putting more or less on as a down payment might be a good or bad thing to get your rate lower, or does it make it higher? A lot of things, that are all, I guess, fair to discuss for people about, what's their best way to go into making an offer on a house and how it helps them out. And when is the right time to lock in the interest rate? Because we all talk about that. We don't even need to get into it. But it's, again, another thing that, we say, like, okay, you're under contract, and I know there's at some point you get the, are we locking in the rate right now? And what, again, for people that don't understand it, what does it mean? So I'll leave it at that. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
See
Looking
you-
forward to 2026.
Yeah,
It's going to be a great year.
2026, and like I said, we'll circle back on a couple of this and keep building on it week to week. So everybody out there, have a happy New Year, a safe one, and let's kick some butt in 2026.
Safe and happy celebrations. 2026 is going to be a great year.
Yeah, see you guys. All right.